All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. So today we're going to take a deep dive into a topic that I know a lot of you have been asking about.
Oh, yeah.
Is Python really the best first programming language? There's a ton of hype around Python these days, and for good reason.
Yeah.
It's incredibly versatile, super beginner-friendly.
Thank you.
But is it always the best place to start? Well, we've got a whole stack of articles and expert opinions here, so we're going to unpack all of that and try to answer that question.
You know what's so interesting about Python is, its history.
Yeah.
It really reflects the evolution of programming itself. Like, in the early days, coding was all about, crunching numbers, really complex stuff.
Right.
But as technologies evolved, the focus has shifted to making things more user-friendly and adaptable. And Python, well, it embodies that shift perfectly.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because one of the articles actually talks about Python's origin story back in 1991.
Oh, wow.
So this guy, Guido van Rossum, he created Python with this idea that code should be readable. It's almost like plain English. And they actually show this side-by-side comparison of the classic Hello World program written in Python versus C++.
Yeah, good.
In Python, it's literally just one line print, hello world.
What?
But C++ M, forget about it. It looks like a jumbled mess.
I can imagine. It's like when you're trying to learn a new language.
Yeah.
Think about Italian. You would want to start with a textbook that throws the subjunctive mood at you right away.
Oh, no.
Python's more like starting with basic greetings and phrases.
Yeah.
You get the fundamentals down first before diving into the more complex stuff.
Totally. And you know what else makes Python so appealing for beginners? Those massive libraries they've got.
The what?
Libraries are like these pre-built toolkits for all sorts of tasks. Over 300,000 of them I read somewhere.
No way, really?
Yeah. So whether you're into data science or game development or web development, there's probably a library out there that's ready to help you build something amazing.
That's incredible. So you're not starting from scratch every time you have a new idea.
Exactly. And that's crucial, especially when you're starting out.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about that instant gratification, seeing your ideas come to life quickly. That keeps you motivated to learn more.
Absolutely. You don't want to get bogged down in the super technical details right from the beginning. It's got to be fun.
For sure. Fun is key. But all right, before we go too far down the Python rabbit hole, let's address the elephant in the room. Some of these articles, they actually raise some concerns about Python being too high level.
Oh, interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, because it takes care of things like memory management behind the scenes, you might miss out on understanding how those lower level processes actually work.
So it's like driving an automatic versus a manual car, right?
Right.
Automatic is smooth and easy, but with a manual, you have to understand how those gears work.
Yeah, perfect analogy. So the question becomes, as a beginner, how deep down the technical rabbit hole do you really want to go?
Right. Good question. And is it necessary right away?
Exactly. And then there's this whole thing about dynamic typing.
Dynamic typing, what's that?
Okay, so let's say you're building a shopping cart app.
Okay.
And you accidentally mix up a product's price, which is a number, with its name, which is a word.
Oh, I see.
Now, some stricter languages, they would flag that error immediately, like, hold up, you can't do that. But Python's more like you do you, which can lead to some interesting results.
Uh-huh. Oh, no.
Yeah, so you might end up with some wonky calculations and some very confused customers.
Python's like that friend who's always up for an adventure, even if it means taking a few wrong turns along the way.
Exactly. Super fun, but maybe not always predictable.
I like that. Okay, so Python has its quirks. We've established that.
Yeah.
But how does it actually stack up against other languages that are often recommended for beginners?
Right. Well, there are a few contenders out there. Let's start with JavaScript.
Okay, JavaScript.
Yeah.
I know it's really popular.
Hugely popular, and for good reason. It's the language that powers the web, all that interactivity you see on websites. That's JavaScript.
Oh, wow. So if you want to build websites, JavaScript is a must-know.
Pretty much, yeah. And the instant feedback you get with JavaScript is super addictive.
Really?
Yeah. You change some code, refresh the page, and bam, you see the results right there in your browser.
That's cool.
It's like having this back-and-forth conversation with the website as you're coding.
That makes sense. And I've heard there's a huge community of JavaScript developers out there.
Oh, massive. It's like a 24/7 coding party online.
Nice. Always someone to help you out if you get stuck.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but,
Mm-hmm.
the articles do mention that JavaScript syntax, the way it's written, can be a bit more, let's say, expressive than Python.
Expressive. What, like more complicated?
Yeah, and it's got some historical baggage that can even trip up experienced developers.
Hmm. So it's had its wild years.
Definitely had its wild years. But hey, who hasn't?
True. True. But if you can master JavaScript, you can build some pretty amazing things for the web.
Absolutely. All right, next up we've got Java, which feels like the granddaddy of programming languages. It's been around forever, right?
It has, and it's still going strong, especially for large-scale applications like, enterprise software and Android apps.
Right, so it's like the reliable workhorse of the programming world.
Yeah, exactly. And Java is what we call strongly typed, meaning it's really strict about data types. You have to declare exactly what kind of data you're working with from the get-go.
So it's like that super organized friend who color codes their calendar and always has a backup plan.
Exactly. And that structure helps you catch errors early on, but it also means there's a bit of a steeper learning curve.
Right, you got to put in the time to learn the rules of the game.
Yeah, but one of the articles pointed out that this strong foundation in Java, it can actually make it easier to learn other languages down the road.
Oh, interesting.
It's like learning proper grammar before you start writing poetry.
I like that. So you build this mental model of how software is structured,
Exactly.
and that can translate to other languages.
Absolutely. Plus, if you're thinking about a career in software development, Java is a powerhouse. Lots of job opportunities out there.
Yeah, Java skills are definitely in high demand. Okay, and last but not least, we have Ruby, which has this reputation for being all about elegance and developer happiness.
Oh, Ruby. I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, they actually designed Ruby with the goal of making coding enjoyable.
Really? That's awesome.
And then there's Ruby on Rails, its famous web development framework.
Oh, right, Rails. I've heard that name thrown around a lot.
Yeah, imagine a framework like a pre-built set of tools and structures for your project, like a scaffolding for a building.
Okay, I'm following.
Rails provides that for web applications, and it makes development super efficient.
Cool. So if you want to build web apps fast, Ruby on Rails is the way to go.
It's a fantastic choice, for sure, although its community is a bit smaller than Python's or JavaScript's.
That's something to consider.
Yeah, and it might not be as versatile outside of web development.
Got it. So we've got this whole lineup of contenders here,
We do.
each with its own strengths and quirks. But what does all this mean for, like, our listener?
Right, the person who's actually trying to choose their first programming language. I mean, it really is like a tough decision, you know?
It is.
Especially if you're brand new to coding.
Right, like where do you even start?
Yeah.
Luckily, the articles actually offer some pretty solid advice on how to approach this.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and it all boils down to this, like aligning the language with your goals and your resources and even your own learning style.
Okay, that makes sense. It's kind of like choosing a car, right? You wouldn't buy a sports car if you need to haul lumber.
Exactly. So the first thing you consider is, like, what are you passionate about? What do you want to build? Do you dream of, like, creating video games or analyzing data or building websites? That's going to be a major factor in deciding which language to go with.
Right, so figure out your end goal first.
Yeah, and then think about the learning resources available for each language. Like, are there plenty of tutorials online? Is there a strong community you can tap into for help?
That's a good point. Having a support system is so important, especially when you're just starting out.
Yeah, for sure. And Python, it's known for being super beginner friendly. There's a ton of resources out there tailored specifically to new learners.
Right, which makes sense given its popularity.
But other languages have their own great communities too, so it's worth doing some research and seeing where you feel most comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, if you're thinking about a career in coding, you got to check out the job market.
Oh yeah, for sure. Some languages might be more in demand depending on your location and what kind of companies are hiring in your area.
So do your research, see what skills are hot right now.
Exactly. Now, there's another interesting point that one of the articles brought up, and it's about setting yourself up for future learning.
Okay, so it's not just about mastering that first language. It's about thinking long term.
Right, exactly. Think about it like this. Learning to drive a stick shift might be harder at first,
Oh, yeah.
but it gives you a deeper understanding of how cars work, which can make it easier to, like, learn to drive other types of vehicles later on.
Interesting. So choosing a language is kind of like that.
Yeah, and starting with a language like Python, which really emphasizes clear syntax and those core programming concepts, it can actually lay a really strong foundation for you to learn more complex languages later if you want to.
Oh, like C++ or Java?
Exactly. It's like you're building this mental toolkit, and the more tools you have, the more equipped you are to tackle any coding challenge that comes your way.
I love that analogy, the mental toolkit. Okay, so regardless of which language you choose, the articles really hammer home the importance of mastering those foundational concepts.
Oh, yeah, the fundamentals. Things like variables, data types, control flow, all that good stuff.
Those are the building blocks of any program, no matter what language you're using.
Exactly. It's like learning the alphabet before you write a novel.
Right, the basics are everything. And once you've got those down, it's all about practice, practice, practice.
Couldn't agree more. The more you code, the more comfortable you become, and the more naturally you start to think like a programmer.
It becomes like second nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And the articles also emphasize the importance of actually building projects.
Oh, yeah, getting your hands dirty.
Right. It's not enough to just read tutorials. You got to put those skills into practice. Start small, build a simple calculator or to-do list app, and gradually work your way up to more complex challenges.
I think that's where the real learning happens.
Absolutely. It's where you run into real-world problems and have to get creative to solve them.
And you end up with something you can actually show off.
Exactly. Plus, it's just fun. Seeing your ideas come to life like that, there's nothing quite like it.
It's super rewarding. Okay, and then there's this whole other aspect of learning to code, and it's the community.
Well, the community, yeah.
The articles talk about how important it is to tap into that network of other coders.
It's such a valuable resource.
Whether it's online forums, local meetups, coding challenges, connecting with other people who are learning too, is so beneficial.
Totally agree. It's a chance to share your struggles and celebrate your wins and learn from each other's experiences.
And ask questions. Get help when you're stuck.
Yeah, the programming community is incredibly welcoming, especially to beginners. Don't be afraid to reach out, ask questions, share your code, no matter how basic you think it is.
Everyone starts somewhere, right?
Exactly. And who knows, you might even make some lifelong coding buddies along the way.
Yeah, that's the best part. Okay, so I think what we're seeing here is that learning to code is not about cramming your brain full of every syntax rule or memorizing every line of code.
It's about the journey.
It's about embracing that process of continuous learning and exploration and growth.
Exactly. Start with one language, get comfortable with the basics, and then feel free to branch out and explore other languages and technologies as you go.
Because ultimately, it's about finding the tools that empower you to create the things you're passionate about.
Right. So yeah, coming back to Python, we've seen that it's got a lot going for it.
It does.
It's readable, it's versatile, it's got a fantastic support system.
But it's not the only game in town. It's not about, like, finding the perfect language,
Right.
It's more about finding the language that really clicks with you.
Totally.
The one that sparks your curiosity, makes you excited to start building stuff.
Yeah, and I think these articles really drive that point home. Like,
Yeah.
the best language isn't some, like, universal truth. It's a personal thing. It's about finding the tool that feels like an extension of your own creativity.
I like that.
Yeah.
So instead of getting all caught up in this Python versus everything else debate,
Right.
maybe the real question is, like, which language speaks to you?
Exactly.
Which one has you, like, itching to fire up that code editor and just start experimenting?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to approach it. And, what if instead of searching for, like, the best, you just choose the language that feels most interesting to you right now? The one that you're genuinely curious about,
Yeah.
the one that you're excited to learn. Because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
learning is always most effective when it comes from a place of passion.
So true.
You got to be engaged. You got to be excited about it.
Absolutely. So there you have it, folks. The lowdown on Python and some of its worthy competitors.
Yeah,
We've
yeah.
explored the pros and cons,
Yeah.
the myths, the realities,
A whole shebang.
the whole shebang. And ultimately, we want you to walk away from this feeling empowered
Oh, yeah.
to choose the language that's right for you and your unique coding journey.
Absolutely. So now that you've got all this info,
Yeah.
what's the next step you're going to take?
Which language will you choose?
What amazing projects are you going to bring to life?
We can't wait to see what you create. Happy coding, everyone.